What's up, guys? Welcome to my new Let's Play series, and today we're going to be looking at a game designed by Wolfring Studios called Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2016. This Let's Play is going to be slightly different to a traditional Let's Play in the fact that I won't be going around just on a single player fashion, taking a team and just progressing that way. I've actually joined an online league called CSL NCAA, where there's other human general managers. So the challenge for us will be to compete with them, see whether we can get to the top in the championship with either the college team that we start out with or moving around job to job, because you can get fired and you can get hired by other teams, and we'll see that hopefully over the next few seasons. So for those of you who have not seen Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2016 before, it's a similar kind of general manager game in the fashion to Out of the Park Baseball or Football Manager, in that it's just focused on college basketball itself. So let's take a look at the team we're going to be and how we're set up. So the team that we've taken here is St John's Red Storm, a New York-based team. The league restrictions when you join is that you have to pick a team prestige of under 60. So I've gone right up there and tried to pick one that's as close to it as possible, so that we're not down in the doldrums of college basketball for too long, and that we can progress. So the team itself is quite interesting in the fact that it plays at Madison Square Garden. It has some solid facilities and academics rating. A B and a C is fairly good. The reason I chose them really was that they're in a conference where their conference prestige is actually higher than their team prestige. So hopefully that will help us attract some good quality talent as we look at recruitment, as that is a key part of any college game. Looking at what our team goals are going to be for this year that we've been set, so qualify for the NCAA tournament, which may be a challenge considering that we're new to this and we'll have to find our feet a little bit with it. We also have to try and finish in the top half of the conference, which I think will be achievable once we get the hang of this game. To win 15 plus games, you'll see here that we've already played a few games before I joined, so we've already won 6, we only have to win another 9, so that one should be possible. And to improve the school prestige, like I said, where the conference prestige is higher than the team prestige, hopefully that'll help us improve our actual prestige as a school. So looking back at St John's, I did have a look at the history of them, and it seems that they've had some good appearances and good results in the past, but recently they haven't been doing too well in NCAA. You can see here that they've got a fairly good record. They've won a couple of conference championships. They've made some regular appearances in the tournament, as well as getting to the semi-finals twice, but they have yet to win that championship. So hopefully we can do that with them. They've also made some other appearances at some of the lower ranked tournaments as well. So how does our coach look? So the way the league was structured, we had to pick a certain number of points to be allocated to our coach here in their attributes. So we went for sort of a medium mix. You could pick 3 levels. One was level 1, where it was very low ratings initially, but a very high potential. Unfortunately, you can't see potential in the game, but they do. You can set it outside. Level 2 is what we went for, where it was sort of a mixture of both. And then there was level 3, where it was the rankings you sort of picked, you were sort of fixed with. So we look at our coach Fury here. Is age 30. Got a very nice salary and a 3-year contract. Like I said, with this game, you can be fired and hired by other teams. So hopefully we can progress with St John's, but if not, then we might have to look elsewhere as the seasons progress. So in terms of his sort of personality, I tend to pick a very high ambition here. Obviously his reputation is below average at the moment. Brand new coach, just joined the program, so we'll hopefully get that to progress as we go along the next couple of seasons. In terms of academics, I left that quite high. I felt that, being a college basketball coach, academics and athletic ability go hand in hand. And then I left the discipline and temper sort of in the middle here, in average. I didn't feel that I wanted to sort of be a highly disciplined coach or one that just let the college guys do anything they wanted. So I kind of left that in the middle. I felt that was the best place to leave it. So if we take a look at our actual assistants, so in the game you have 3 assistants, and typically they'll have a staff role you can assign to them, from recruiting to scouting to practice. So if we look at our first assistant here, Barry, he's definitely our strongest assistant in that he has some really good attributes. In terms of offense, defense, recruiting is excellent here. Scouting a little bit lower than average, but that's okay. We can always balance that out later. And he's got a really strong player development. So Barry's one that we'll probably want to try and keep hold of throughout the next couple of seasons whilst we're here. We've kind of assigned him the role of recruiting at the moment, obviously because his recruiting attributes are excellent. But hopefully we'll hang on to him and progress. If we move to our second assistant, Matt here, he's not as strong, but he's fairly okay. He's got some good coaching ability on offense, defense, fairly strong recruiting ability, and his scouting and player development it's not great, but it's okay. So maybe we'll keep Matt for the time being and see how he goes and see if we can progress. I mean, he's currently looking at scouting, which is one of his worst attributes here. So maybe we might want to try and get someone who's more specialist in just the scouting area as our second assistant going forward. And then finally we have Shogo here, who's our sort of youngest of our assistants and definitely our worst, being our third assistant. And he has no real standout attributes apart from the recruiting. He's currently in charge of practice at the moment, and he's the worst person at practice, sort of the offense and defensive coaching here. But we may look to try and bring someone else in next season. So there are three assistants, and we do have the option to hire, extend and fire, and I'll be really interested as we go along the series to see what your thoughts are with that. If I go back to here, we have sort of a budget that's assigned to us at the start of the season, and you can see we've already sort of assigned a certain amount to our coaches for their salaries. A certain amount has already been spent on recruiting. We joined the team after the recruiting period, and we'll cover who the AI has brought in for us for next season later on as we look at the team. But we do have a bit of remaining budget here, so there are options that we can potentially look to bring in different types of assistants. And if you have any ideas of whether we should keep these guys or fire them, I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say. So if we move on to the actual staff, from the staff roster to the actual team roster, as you can see with college, there's a mixture of different ages and different years in here. We'll try and keep that balance as we go throughout the next couple of seasons, because we won't to have a huge recruiting class leave us empty-handed. So we'll try and keep an eye on that as we go along. If we look at the status, we have majority of our players are scholarship players, which is great. It means we tend to get, obviously scholarship players tend to be of a better quality than the walk-ons, and the walk-ons tend to just be there to make up the numbers really. And hopefully the scholarship guys will be of a good standard as we look through them in a minute. So in terms of how the structure of a player works in this game, it's similar to your football managers and your OOTPs, in that you have some player ratings which are attributes, similar to like your shooting or batting ability. But here it's obviously basketball focused, so you have your inside shooting, outside shooting, rebounding, handling skills, defensive ability. With it being a college game, these ratings are on a scale of 1 to 100, and you tend to have sort of anything around the 40 margin. I'd say is average to pretty good. Anything below that is obviously lower, not as good. You then also have the player profile information, which generally gives a bit of personality to the players. So you're looking at whether they're how injury prone they are, what good their work ethic is. Obviously, if someone has a great potential, as you'll see with these sort of darker blue lines and with these balls up here with potential, if he's not got great work ethic, then he's not going to really achieve that. And then you have sort of personality, playing time and popularity, and they all play a factor into how the person's relationship is with the team and coach. As you progress throughout the season, if you have players with low personalities and high demands for playing time, you may end up finding that they start fighting with each other, and we'll have to try and handle that through telephone conversations that you can have on here. And that would be interesting to see how we do with that as we progress. And then also unique to the college game, as you may know, in terms of professional basketball, a lot of the focus is on the star player and getting the star player the ball to make the plays and win the game for the team. In college basketball, a lot of the players are generally very similar mould, and the focus, as I'm sure most of you will be aware, is on the types of play that you'll use and types of sets you use. A lot of great college teams may not have the best players, but they have a really good, strong play proficiency in terms of how they play on offence, defence, and how they pressure the ball. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and make sure that we're using a combination of good recruitment as we go through the years, along with the right type of strategy to get the very best out of the players. And then finally, down this bottom section, you have a scouting report, which is almost like a written write-up of the attributes. You have some information around player history, whether they get injuries or awards as you go along. And then you finally have these shot preferences, so what types of shot that person is most likely to use. And this is, you can customise this again with using the telephone conversations, and we'll touch on that as we go through the seasons. If we've got a bad shooting player who's got some good attributes, we might want to look at readjusting their type of shot, or if we're playing a certain type of offence, we might want to look at certain types of shot. But we'll see how we go. So if we take a look at the player itself, so the first one we've got up here is Terence Cook. So Terence Cook is probably our starting point guard this season. You can see he's got some fairly strong passing and ball handling skills, which is vital for a point guard. His defence is not particularly great, but he's got a good discipline, and his court intelligence isn't too bad. But he does have an outright outside shot, which will be very helpful as we look through. In terms of the offensive play sets, he's got some fairly good understanding across the board, but he's not an excellent in terms of understanding the roles. You typically would want these to be around sort of 70 plus to really be sort of utilised and be overrated in certain systems. So Terence Cook's probably our starting point guard. And you can see he's already played some games, and we'll touch on the games later on. And he's looked okay so far from when I was looking through earlier. If we move forward to Kurt Brown, so you can see it's probably slightly better than Terence Cook. But he has the potential to be better. He's got more leeway in that sense. He's a bit of a better defender and a better stealer, which is good. His discipline is not great, neither is his court intelligence. So in terms of running the point at the moment, he may be more prone to turnovers than Cook would. But he's got some good passing handling, an excellent outside shot, and he doesn't have a great demand for his playing time, which is great, which means we can sort of look to develop him as we go along the season. Again, he's got a bit of a mixture of offensive sets and different types of defence, nothing that really stands out as being the one thing that he would excel in. But he has some potential to growth, which will be great, and hopefully we'll see that as we go along. So we move on to Austin Ricks. Austin Ricks is almost certainly our weakest point guard of the set. He's definitely our third string point guard here, in terms of he's got pretty poor defensive ability like Cook. He's not the most athletic, but he's got some good court intelligence. But I don't see him seeing much playing time as we go throughout the season. He has some better understanding of offensive sets, which has probably allowed him to get to at the stage he is at in his college career, to sort of compensate that athleticism. So we'll see how it goes, but I think for me we'll start with probably Cook in the point guard, maybe Kurt Brown possibly playing some shooting guard, and then Rick's probably sitting on the bench for most of it. So if we move on to our shooting guards themselves, we have Kurt Scott here, who clearly has some great potential here. He looks like he could become a really, really good defender in the position. He has a fantastic outside shot here, 100 out of 100, which is great. But he's got a lot of room to grow. So whether he gets playing time this year, we'll see. But maybe when we're playing some of the weaker games against some of the less competitive college teams, we may look to utilise him more. So we move on to Chris McDevitt. So he looks okay. He's not got some great passing and handling skills, but he's got a good outside shot. He's fairly. If I had to pick, he's probably quite an average player, really. Again, he's got a bit of a mixture here in terms of this, but he's some focuses on some Princeton and triangle offense, which is good. So he'll probably be a bit of a bench player for us, probably jumping in and playing some minutes at the guard positions. If we look at Greg Wynn, I can't see him getting too much playing time, mainly because he's got some atrocious defensive ability, and his scoring's not great. So the scoring attribute is quite unique in DDS games, in the fact that the scoring ability, I always understood it as sort of the ability for them to make their own shot. So because he's got a low scoring ability, it means that he really needs to have wide open shots to be impactful in the game. So he's probably not going to see a great deal of playing time, I would say. We'll have to watch on him because his personality is very low here. So he may be a bit of a disruptor for us. So we'll see how that plays out. Next up we have Chris Demori, who looks quite a fairly average player again. He's got some good passing and handling skills. Well, not potentially passing, but some good ball handling skills, which is really helpful at the shooting guard position. He's got some great understanding of offensive sets, so he's definitely a guy. If we put him in the right type of strategy, he could be very helpful for us. So we'll see how that progresses. And next up we have our first small forward, in that we have E.K. Augustine. So he looks like he's quite a strong player for us. He's got some really good defensive ability, which would be great, which means that we can probably put him on some of the better opposition players and allow him to guard them. He's got some pretty good ball handling skills, and free throw shooting, a bit of a balance in terms of his shooting as well, which is good to see. So he may be quite a key player for us this year. He looks like a solid small forward really, and looks like he has the potential to possibly play some guard positions as well. In terms of the set preferences, he's got some really good understanding here of man-to-man defense, Princeton triangle. So maybe we look to play that type of strategy as we go along. Next up we have Derek Hawkins, who, wow, that is some terrible defense. 18, that's awful. He doesn't look too great, to be honest. He looks like he could possibly do a job for us, but it'd have to be in games where he's not guarding anyone of any importance, because that defensive ability is terrible, and he's not got any great understanding in terms of skill sets. So we'll try to limit his minutes probably as best we can. Next up we have is Derek Lemons, who looks like he's got some really good potential in terms of the ratings, but obviously he's not there at the moment. He's only a junior, so maybe he'll progress as we go along if we can give him some game time. But he looks like he could become a good defender. Some really good ball handling skills actually, and a bit of a mixture in terms of his shooting. But hopefully we'll see how he progresses. We might want to give him a few minutes and see if we can get him sort of learning that defensive ability as we try to develop him. Next up we have sort of the power forward positions. So first up we have is Bruce Jackson, who he's got some potential. He doesn't look great. He's got some good defensive potential, so maybe he'll get there. Really interesting that he's got some really high drawing fouls ability, so that would be interesting to see how that plays a factor in games if we put him in, and whether he can entice the opposition into to giving away silly fouls. In terms of understanding, he's still got a lot of understanding to get there. In terms of offensive sets, so he may need to be developed a little bit more, but we'll see how he progresses. Next up we have Jim Claggett, who's probably one of our better players on the team. He's got some good defensive ability, some good court intelligence, some excellent ball handling skills for a power forward as well, and some solid rebounding ability, which is good to see, and a good range of shooting ability. He also seems to have a good understanding of sets. That Princeton triangle to me looks like that's the one we might want to look at, because we have some our highest rated players that generally have a good understanding of that type of set. So it looks like Jim might be quite a key player for us this year as well. We'll see how he goes. Next up we have Ben Seals, who looks like he's got some strong attributes in terms of rebounding and ball handling. Not the most athletic of guy or the best at defending, but he's got a good drawing fouls ability. So it'd be interesting to see if we can use that again. He's not got a great understanding of different types of sets though, so he may underperform in certain types of complicated sets that we may want to use. But he's got an outside shot, which is interesting, so maybe we can utilise him from the bench. Next up we have is Dan Butler, who is our only one of our sort of only centres, to be honest. At 6'7", he's quite small and undersized for a centre. He looks like he's again one of these who's not quite there in terms of his current ability. He's a pretty terrible rebounder. His passing hand is not great. Neither is scoring. He looks like he's predominantly just a guy who will feed off the inside. Look, he's got a high post game here, likes to drive the ball in. He's got some interesting sort of potential in terms of a defensive ability and drawing fouls. So maybe he can develop a little bit more. And he's got an okay understanding of offensive sets, so he wouldn't be too much of a liability. And he's got a really excellent work ethic, so hopefully he can get to see some of these potentials and become a good player for us down the road. But he might be one that we will put in the rotation for now. And then we have James McCain, who looks like he's got some fairly good potential attributes. He looks like he's got some good sort of ball handling ability. Nothing that really stands out. He's not a great rebounder in the centre position, but he's got the size, so maybe that'll compensate a little bit. His understanding of sets is not great, so we might have to be wary of that again. So that's our team itself. For me, looking at it, probably Ike Augustine's probably one of our better players, and with Jim Claggett. So we want to make sure that we use something that plays their ability. And when I was looking through earlier, it looks like the triangle offence is the way to go. In that they both have real strong understanding of that, and we will get the best out of them in that type of system. So we'll have to sort of think about that in a second. So if we go through and have a look at the actual strategy, I've already set this up a little bit earlier. So I think, bearing in mind that I sort of mentioned around that triangle offence. So I've tried to keep it a mixture between triangle and high post, thinking that we might be able to utilise the strong forward positions that we've got. We've got a couple of better players in there rather than relying on our guards. So we're looking at going a bit of triangle, a bit of Princeton, a bit of high post probably, and we'll see how that gets us. In terms of the offensive settings, I've kept it balanced. You can sort of change it whether you want it inside, outside, but I felt a balanced one would work quite well. Doesn't leave us relying too much on inside points or 3-point line shots. And I've sort of split this between 70%, 30% in terms of how I want the team to run. So predominantly we're going to be running sets out of here. If we can, then we'll try and see if we can get breaks in transition. But we'll mainly focus on offensive sets. I like to build a structure around how we play on offense. Taking a look at the defensive strategy, I've kept it very basic, just going some real simple man-to-man most of the time. We might play the occasional zone to mix it up a bit, but I didn't feel there was any need to be too complicated with this. Predominantly, our guys, most of them understood the man-to-man defense in 3-2, so that's why I've gone with that. In terms of pressure sets, I went with the 1-2-1-1 press. The only reason is that I noticed a lot of our sort of guys that we would have in our starting rotation have some understanding of this. And I haven't felt the need to sort of spread this about across the board. I felt if we could just focus on one, when I talk about our sort of practice plan in a minute, it means we can just focus and just really utilise and become experts in that one type of pressure set. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, the coach assignments are sort of done here. I'm going to leave them as is for now. Barry's going to be our recruiting expert, Matt's going to look at our scouting, and Shogo's going to focus on our practice. But interested to hear your thoughts on whether you think that's the right type of plan to use. Like I said, I just want to use Barry's recruiting ability throughout the couple of seasons and see how we get on. We might want to mix it up and give him a bit of a practice one as we go through the season, but we'll see how we go with that. So in terms of our practice plan, like I said, with the offensive defense strategy, I've focused our practice plan predominantly around the three types of offensive sets we're going to be using. A little bit of mixture on some zone attack, mainly because I felt we had to have a bit of an understanding around that. Even though we're not going to use it, it might be that if we do make our way into a tournament at the end of this postseason, we will have to might have to use those if someone is using a particular type of zone against us. And then in terms of the defensive stuff, like I said, we're going to focus on just this one type of press and just on man-to-man and zone. So that's where the rest of the time's been spent for our practice. So if we go back to our roster, we'll take a look at how the sub-matrix is looking and the depth chart. So in terms of how you set your team up on this, you assign players in a depth chart. So you look at your starting five and then your remaining bench players, and then you can go into the sub-matrix and you can ask the AI to suggest, or you can put certain types of levels here. So this out level indicates of what sort of energy level that player is before they're taken out of the rotation typically. So everyone obviously will start with 100, and as they sort of go into the game, their energy will start to decrease, and then that's when they may be taken out. But the sub-matrix also means that there's certain points in the game where there's players are rotated. So you'll see here in the first half here, this is how we sort of line up for each sort of several minutes stint as we progress along. So for me, I've decided to go initially with Cook and Brown in the backcourt, primarily because I felt I wanted the strong ball handling skills in there, and I felt that whilst Kurt Brown's ball handling skills were not great, I felt that his defensive ability might be very helpful against other guards. Obviously, we've gone with Ike Augustin in the small forward position. That was a no-brainer. He's one of our better players, so we'll see if we can get the best out of him. And then I've gone for Ben Seals. So for those of you who may not remember, Ben Seals was someone who had some good current ability. Not a great defender, but I really wanted this rebounding ability in there. I felt that the centres that we had in terms of Butler and McCain, their rebounding was not good enough really. So I felt to put them lower down the rotation and put Ben Seals in there and move Jim Claggett, probably one of our better players, into the centre position to see if we can utilise their skill sets rather than just have a traditional centre in there. Play a little bit more in terms of smaller, in terms of size. But obviously Jim he's 209 pounds, so hopefully that he'll be able to sort of compete with the other opposition centres, regardless of his size difference. And then in terms of the bench, I've sort of gone for Chris McDevitt off of as our sixth man. I felt that he again had some good defensive ability, but I wanted to use his sort of shot preferences, and he had a good understanding of our offensive set. So I felt that he was the next logical guy to be the one who would come into the rotation. Ricks is sort of that other point guard, I says probably third string. He may get some minutes from the bench. And then Lemons was the one that we were looking to develop, so he'll obviously try and get some time, but playing at small forward position, Augustin's going to take up most of the minutes there. So that's how we kind of line up for now. Let's take a brief look at our recruitment. So as I said, I kind of missed the recruitment window when I joined the league. So we had 3 players, you can see here, who've already signed letters of intent with us. If we go down to the actual commitments here, we go to our actual league. We're in the Big East. You can see unfortunately I don't have any ratings that I can see. Typically, if you're going for a normal recruiting period, you would go into this recruitment window here, and you'd be able to sort of click in and see and start to scout players and watch them and talk to them and really sort of try to entice them into your team. As you guys may know, in college basketball, you can't cut or trade players or sign them or pay for them. So it's very much, a lot of it's on recruitment and making sure you can get the best players you possibly can with your scholarships that you have to offer. So like I said, we had 3 this year, and I didn't actually have any input into these guys. But we can see in terms of their overall rank. So obviously we've got Tim Reed and Dante Burks, who seem to be fairly average in terms of their rankings. So I'm not expecting a great deal out of them. They'll probably be similar to the types of players that we have now. So it'd be interesting to see when they come in how they fit. But Mike Perez was the one that really made me sort of stand up and have a think, in terms of he's got an overall ranking 53, which is excellent. 53 ranked in the whole country, and position ranked 14th. So maybe he might be our next star that we'll want to try and build our team around over the next few years. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully we can when these guys come in and we can take a look at them, hopefully they're of a good standard to keep us going. But like I sort of alluded to earlier, probably Ike Augustin, Jim Claggett are our best players at the moment, so we want to build around them. But focus of this college game is going to be on sort of picking the right type of offensive, defensive sets, so that we can get the best out of the players, because we don't have any real stars. We're not a top college team. So we'll have to, play some really good team basketball to progress. So if we take a look at the actual conference that we're in, so we're in the Big East. So like I said, it's quite a high prestige conference. So there's a lot of fairly well-known college teams in here. Everyone will be familiar with Georgetown and the likes of Butler, Villanova, from March Madness this year. So hopefully we'll be able to compete with these guys. It looks like Georgetown the only ranked team that we have at the moment in the conference, based on the start of the season. But we haven't played any actual conference games yet. We're still going through and playing against various colleges throughout the country. You can see how we started. We had a first game against Eastern Kentucky, and we got a win there. And then we played William Mary, got a loss, and we haven't lost since, which is really promising. So I'd say in terms of when I took over, I probably took over probably around the South Carolina game. So you can see we've sort of carried on progressing, and our recent game against Rugters here, we had a good game. We shot really well, which is fantastic to see, 50%, sorry. And it looks like the rotation is working fairly well. Looks like Ben Steels is not doing too great, but he's not having a lot of the shots. So, like I said, EK Augustine is our main guy in terms of building around him and Jim Claggett. So it looks like they're having some really strong games here, getting some good points between them. And Derek Lemons, the one that I mentioned earlier, who has some really good potential, is sort of doing okay. He's not shots not great, but he's getting some minutes, which is great to see. And but it looks like, interestingly, Dan Butler, the one I said who the centre who didn't have great rebound ability, looks like he shot the ball quite well in this game and sort of made a bit of difference from the bench, which is really good to see. So what my thought is that I'll recap this sort of every week, and we'll take a look at the box scores in more detail. But in terms of how the other games have been going, it seems like I said, Jim Claggett, EK Augustine are sort of key players. Hopefully we can sort of build around them and get them enough of the ball to make an impact for us. So in terms of when the actual conference games start, we've got a couple of games in between now. We've got a real big test coming up against number 2 Louisville. So hopefully it'll be a good test for us to see where we are actually against some of the real elite competition in the league, and across the US really. But our first game of the conference is going to be against that 20 ranked Georgetown. So hopefully we can kick it off and start really well, and then we sort of dive straight into conference games until the end of February. So I'll look to recap on a weekly basis sort of how we've been doing, who's been our standout players, any sort of surprises or shocks, see what's happening. So, like I said, in terms of the recruitment, there's not a great deal we'll be doing this year because we've already had our scholarships agreed. But next year we'll have a full focus throughout the sort of off season, looking at our recruits, and I'll be really interested to see what you guys think in terms of who we should target when we get to that stage. And do you guys think that we've got the right rotation set up? Do we think there's anything else we might want to be looking at in terms of our staff signings, or in terms of what type of strategy we might want to use? And we'll see where it goes, really. So that's kind of it for this episode. I'll catch back with you guys in a week's time, and hopefully we'll have some games we can go through and talk about. That Louisville game would be really interesting to see how we do with that one, like I said. And we've got sort of that 2-game interlude before we sort of touch base in Georgetown. And hopefully we can, throughout the season, start to really make an impact in this conference. I think, like I said, our targets for that top half, I think, will be achievable. There's some teams looking around in here that we should be able to get results against. It's just whether we can stay up against the top teams. And what I'll do each week is we'll take a look at some of the polls as well. We're currently ranked sort of 55th on the RPI rankings, if I scroll up. So we're not in the top 25. Hopefully we can try and crack that either this year or the next 2 years or so, and keep our job here. And whether we progress to other college teams, we'll see. But we'll see how we progress with St. John's. I'm positively optimistic about this season. I think for me, like I've sort of touched on this several times now, Jim Claggett and EK Augustine will be very key to how we do this year. So hopefully, they'll push us on and get us a tournament appearance, which will be fantastic. But that's it for me for this episode, guys. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the game itself, I'll put the link in the description below, as well as the online league that I'm in. More than happy for you guys to buy the game and join the league and try and compete against me and see who comes out best. And as always, if you're interested in following me along, click that subscribe button, and also drop any comments or feedback that you have in the feedback section below, and I'll be interested to read them before we go through to the next week's episode. But for now, that's from me, guys. Thanks very much, and stay tuned for next week's.